It does accidentally become an asset protection tool in many instances, but it's primarily a privacy tool. An LLC doesn't have the privacy a land trust has, but it does have better asset protection. So I like to make the beneficiary of my land trust an LLC. And I get the best of both worlds. You don't have to register a land trust. How much do you pay every year for your California LLC? $800 every year. If you put it in land trust, you don't pay that. There's no registration. Now, let's take that a step further. What if you went to Colorado and formed an LLC? You can do that for $100 a year. And you made that LLC the beneficiary to the land trust in California. The beneficiary of the land trust is not doing business in the state of California. If you have an LLC that you title California real estate into, it's doing business in the state of California, $800. But if it's the beneficiary of the land trust, it's not doing business in the state of California. That just saved you $700 a year. Yes, ma'am.
Could you have multiple land trusts of which an LLC is the beneficiary of those multiple land trusts?
Great question. You are right on track. You're thinking in the right direction. You're a CPA. Well, there you go. She's a good thinker. I advise everybody to put their own, every single piece of real estate into its own separate land trust. Keep them insulated. The bad advice attorneys will give you is, oh yeah, I can set up a land trust for you. You got 10 houses, we'll dump them all in there. Don't want to do that. But now, that leads you to the problem that if you really want to do this right, as Kathy says, you form a land trust for each property, and the beneficiary is an LLC. And if you got more than 4 or 5 or 10 properties, that gets to be unwieldy, doesn't it? And paperwork, costs. And that's the way we used to do it in the old days, until November of 1999 in Delaware. They invented an animal called a series LLC. And it's spread across the land, and there's probably 20, 25 states that honor a series LLC. You can't get one in California, but they do recognize them. In a nutshell, a series LLC has as many cells in it as you can create. You could have a business in one cell, a hotel in another cell, single family house, an apartment building. And so you can have all these trusts flowing down to one series LLC and still have asset protection between the cells. That's the theory. Okay?
Is it held up in court of law?
It has not held up to the state Supreme Court level, and that's what we're waiting for, to make sure it will do what everybody thinks it will do. So far it's held up, but not to the Supreme Court level, which is where we need it to be. To my knowledge, there's not been a case that does that. So, yes, we like LLCs, just don't tie your real estate in them, all right? Why should you form a land trust? Well, certainly we've been talking a lot about privacy and asset protection, but you can actually make money with these things, like selling the beneficial interest on a contract, like wholesale, short sales. If you do a short sale, those usually take a long time to get completed, don't they? And what if you really go out and you negotiate this killer deal, and you want, you need some of that profit that you know is there, but it's going to be 4 more months before the deal closes. And you come to me and say, hey Randy, I got this killer deal. I analyze it and say, yeah, I agree. And you say, well, I'll sell it to you at X amount. It's in the trust, the purchase of contract. You've made the offer in the name of the trust, okay? And you sell me the beneficial interest in the trust. Well, that purchase contract just keeps on going through the process. You can't do that if you make the offer in your name, right? You can't change anything. They won't allow any changes from day one to the day end. So offer it in the name of your trust, and then you can do anything you want. Cute down here at the trust level, the beneficiary level. That's the way you use them for short sales. You can do the same thing with foreclosures, REOs. So these land trusts aren't just for privacy and asset protection, they are for making money, which is what we want to do. Any questions on that? Let's delve into some of those 50 reasons. Avoiding probate. Has anybody ever had to deal with probate? Have you?
Yep, on one of the
Is that a fun thing to do?
20K property investments with one of our local members here. We're in probate on the property right now. It's stopping everything.
It stops everything. Now, the nice thing about property and land trust is if the beneficiary dies, the interest goes immediately upon his debt to the successor beneficiary. So you can see how that could be really important to your family if the only asset you got that's producing income is in this property, and if you don't have a land trust and you die, well, who's going to live? But we may not even be able to bury old dad because everything's going into probate, and that usually takes a year or two. That doesn't happen if you use a land trust. The interest immediately transfers to the successor. Big, big benefit there. Ease of transferability. We could, if this building were in a land trust, let's say we put it in a land trust last week, and I was the beneficiary, and I came here tonight, and I said to Carl, I'll sell you this building, and we work out a deal, and I assign that beneficial interest to Carl. That is a confidential, unrecorded, nobody knows what profit was made. And Carl says, you know, I made such a killer deal, I'm going to sell this to Ted. Tonight, 5 minutes after I transferred to him. He can transfer it to Ted. Now, we have to have the trustee acknowledge these things, but we can do that with a fax machine, right? Ease of transferability. We don't need the title companies to be open. We don't need to go to the courthouse and record a deed. We can do this at midnight.
Don't you still have to transfer and file the work with it?
No, because I transferred to you the beneficial interest. The title is still in the trustee's name.
Okay.
Isn't that nice? Ease of transferability. This is a biggie. Judgments do not attach. If you happen to have a lien or a judgment against you, or think maybe one's coming down the pipe, you need to use a land trust if you're going to own any real estate, because once that lien or judgment hits, if property's in your name, it will immediately attach. And again, your creditor's got you. You're frozen. You can't do business. You can do business, even with liens and judgments against you personally, if you use the trust. Let me give you a good story here, and I promised the people that were at last night's meeting that I would try to come up with some new stories. Back in the 1980s, I was involved in a general partnership. Don't ever get involved in a general partnership. That means everybody's liable for everybody, doesn't it? No. And we owned some commercial buildings, I think. Anyway, I got to the point where I wanted to sell out, and the managing partner bought my interest for a little bit of cash and a great big $40,000 note. And guess what happened to the note? He didn't pay. He defaulted. So I sued him. I won. I got a judgment. And the next thing you do once you have a judgment is you file what's called a memorandum of judgment in the county in which you think he owns the property. So in my county, I filed that at the courthouse. Now that's like taking a big blanket and just throwing it up over that covers everything that he owns in the county in his name. And I sat back and I waited. And about a year went by, and I got a call from a title company agent. He said, Randy, we're trying to close this real estate deal down here, and your name came up as the lien holder. I said, really? What property is that? And they said, well, it's a condominium. I said, well, who's trying to sell? And they said, the daughter's name of this guy who I had the judgment is. I thought, well, my judgment is against him, not his daughter. Well, as it turned out, when his daughter bought the condo, he just put his name on it with her. Wasn't that nice of him? They were both on the title. That's a big mistake. You don't want to do that. So they said, will you come down and release this? I said, no. Why would I do that? I've been waiting for my money. This is payday. I said, I will sign a partial release for every dime of equity in this transaction. And that's what they did, because they didn't have any choice. Either the deal was going to not close, or they were going to give me all the cash. Now, it wasn't enough. It was like $7,000 or $8,000, so it didn't pay back my 40. But it was a valuable learning experience, not only for me, but for him and his daughter. And I'm sure they had some choice words that evening. But it serves as a great example as to why you don't put your name on title. And certainly you don't want to put your name on title with somebody else, because then you are at risk of them doing something stupid to your title. Right? This is good stuff. This is 40 years of the real estate business I've been in, that I can impart good things to you so you don't have to deal with it. You can avoid these kind of problems. No registered agent, we talked about that. We talked about that. Trustee has no personal liability. That's good to know, because I like to use individuals as trustees. You can have a corporation, you can have a bank, a title company, trustee service, professional trustee service, but they're all going to charge you. And if you follow my advice to put each property into a separate land trust, that's going to get expensive, doesn't it? I like individuals. Individuals won't give you up. They are harder to find than institutions. I'll give you another good story that serves the purpose. There was a guy in my town who was a big wheeler dealer, real estate guy, and he was doing real well. And there was this parking garage that that had a whole bunch of code violations. And so the city foreclosed on the owner and took the parking garage away from him because he never fixed the code violations. Well, this real estate wheeler dealer, he buys the parking garage from the city. And part of the deal was the city provided him $250,000 of fix-up money to take care of the code violations. And guess what he did? He didn't fix the code violations. And who knows what he did with $250,000? So the city foreclosed on him. Now, we had one bidder at the foreclosure sale. That bidder became successful. The bidder was the trustee of the land trust. So nobody really knew who was the beneficiary, because the trustee bought it up here. With me? Time goes by, nothing happens to the code violations. So the city goes to the trustee, who was a local bank. And there's a law in the state of Illinois that says if you have code violations on a property, that they can demand the trustee tell you who the beneficiary is. Because most of the time you can't demand that. So the city goes to the bank and says, give him up. We want to know who the beneficiary is of this trust because he's not doing anything. And the bank said, okay, it's XYZ Corporation is the beneficiary of the land trust. Now, all the city had to do was go to the Illinois website and type in the name of this corporation. And up pops whose name? The wife of the guy who was foreclosed on. She was president, vice president, secretary, treasurer of the corporation that was the beneficiary to the land trust. And they had him, and they got him, and he had to liquidate a whole bunch of real estate and pay off, like, by this time it was $800,000-900,000 he owed. Now, I think, if you're going to have code violations, you need to fix them. I'm not saying that he should have gotten by with this, but it serves as a real interesting case study. Where were his mistakes? Let's start at the beneficiary level. He formed a corporation with his wife, which is public information, in the state of Illinois. And that's the state we're in. He formed a land trust in Illinois and made a local institution the trustee. If that trust had been out of state with an out-of-state trustee, they wouldn't have been able to just go over, walk down the street and say, give us the information. They would have had to go try to find that trustee. Now, think about this a minute. I've had 7 trustees die in the last 30-some years using land trust. And what's real interesting about when they die is that the title remains in their name. Isn't that interesting? The title remains in their name. Now, why would I need a trustee to sign a document? Any idea? Well, I want to get the property out of the trust. I want to sell it. So I need his signature on the deed, trustee's deed. Or I want to finance or refinance the property. I need a signature on the mortgage. If I'm not doing one of those 2 things, I don't need his signature. It could stay in a dead man's name for 20 years. But if you go look up the owner of that property, it's going to be in the dead man's name. That's not bad, is it? Pretty hard to find those guys, and real hard to serve them. So you could do some really interesting things with these trusts. For example, you could form the trust with Ursula as your trustee today and close the deal, and tomorrow fire Ursula and hire Ted over here. But the title is going to show up in the courthouse records in Ursula's name. Ursula doesn't own it anymore. Ted owns it. That's good stuff. Right? Yes, ma'am.
I'm back on the dead trustee question.
Okay, let's go back to that.
What happens when you do want to refinance it or sell it?
Good question. What you do when you need a signature is you appoint a new trustee.
Okay.
One of the forms that I provide in my home study course, I give you all the forms you'll ever need the rest of your life. In Word format, you load them up on your computer and you got it. And one of those forms is appointment of a new trustee. You fire the old one and hire a new one. Just like that. And you can do that every day if you want to. Hire and fire trustees. So, it gives you a lot of control, and it puts you in a position where you can do things in your trust agreement that builds asset protection in an entity that doesn't normally have asset protection. As I said, a land trust is primarily for privacy. But let's say that you set up this trust and you put a paragraph in that trust that said, if the trustee is ever served with any legal documents, or ever even thinks he's going to get sued, he must immediately resign and transfer all files to another trustee in another state. Anybody old enough to remember the button? Who's got the button? That's a very old game. It's kind of like a shell game, you know, with the nut underneath the cups. So you're always a step ahead. Always a step ahead of everybody. And you know, let's just get this out on the table. The legal system in America is broken. And there's nothing you and I can do about it except deal with it. And if you ever find yourself, unfortunately, dealing with the legal system, you'll realize that it's not about who's right, who's wrong. It's about who's got the smartest lawyer, who's got enough money to throw enough hurdles at you to either run you out of money, frustrate you, or you die before you ever get into court. You know, 97% of the lawsuits in America are settled. So most lawsuits are just about money, not about right and wrong. So you want to put yourself in a position where it doesn't pay to sue you. If they've got to spend $10 to get $1, they'll go find somebody else to sue. And that's really what we're talking about here. You're putting yourself in a position where you're not easy to sue. And if you're not easy to sue, they probably won't sue, or they'll give up and they'll go find some other sucker. Sorry, but that's just the way it is, guys. Yes, sir.
So when you're wanting to transfer your trustee, are you just creating a new document and assigning?
It's just a simple form. The trust agreement remains the same. It's just a simple 2-page form that I'm appointing you instead of him. Firing her and hiring me.
So you create a new document assigning the new.
And I have it notarized, and I stick it in the file. It's official. You always want to be able to go up in front of a judge and answer questions honestly. You don't ever want to lie to a judge. So if you do these things right, you don't have to lie to anybody. You just do them right, and then they take care of it. Let's look at some more advantages here. Avoiding the due on sale clause, that could be an advantage, couldn't it? We talked about keeping the sales price private. Especially in small communities, lots of real estate investors don't want others to know what they're doing and how much money they're making and what kind of a deal. You know, if you create this super duper deal, lease option or whatever it is, and it gets recorded, I could trot on down there and look that up, Dan, and say, well, here's what old Dan's doing. That's a great idea. I'm going to do that too. You operate, think about it, think of it as if, a submarine that goes along the surface and then it dips and goes below the surface. That's where I'm taking you. I'm taking you down below the surface so nobody can see what you're doing. Yes, sir.
I heard that when Walt Disney was building Disney World, he used land trusts to hide the properties he was buying so that nobody knew he was.
He did. He used literally hundreds of real estate brokers in the state of Florida, and that none of them knew about the others. And he'd hire this broker to go out and buy this parcel, and this broker to buy that parcel, and all those parcels were then deeded to one land trust when it was all said and done. And that's what kept the price from going through the roof, because the word never got out. Yeah, he was a smart guy. We talked about non-judicial repossession of real estate and what a benefit that was with Dan's deal. No 1099 transfers. Naming your trust. Do you mind if I ask you what the attorney recommended you name your trust?
One thing told us to use a series of random numbers and then maybe phrase 3161 property group land trust.
3161 Property Group Land Trust. It's not bad. A lot of attorneys will tell you to put your name in the trust. I've even seen Social Security numbers in your trust.
Oh, God.
So you really gotta watch this. But I think it's very important to come up with a good name for your trust, because attorneys don't like to sue trusts because they don't know who the beneficiary is. They like certainty in a lawsuit. So if they don't know who they're suing, there's the possibility that they may get sued back, and they don't like that. I don't like it. So one of the things that I teach in my home study course, this comes with DVDs of me teaching the live seminar. So you get a seminar and a home study course together here, but one of the things that I teach in that course is how to name your trust. What kind of numbers to come up with, what kind of names to come up with. I am the trustee of a California land trust. It's got an apartment building in it. And when the person who bought the property, who I served as trustee for, when we formed all that, he came to me and he said, what name should we come up with? And we kicked around several things, and what we came up with was the Lakers Dodgers Investment Trust. What's that make you think of?
Oh shit.
Pardon me?
Oh shit.
Sounds like money.
Sounds like money, doesn't it?
Sounds like a lot of lawyers.
Sounds like a lot of lawyers. Don't the Lakers and Dodgers have lots of lawyers?
Right.
Doesn't that sound like there's a bunch of high-powered guys involved in this thing? So maybe you don't want to sue this trust. Maybe you ought to go down the road and find one that says Molly Johnson Family Trust or whatever that you know doesn't have high power behind it. So we have a lot of fun in the class teaching you how to come up with good, with creative names that sound powerful and like you wouldn't want to sue them. Yes, sir.
Is that different than just naming it what the property address is?
Yeah, that's another bad thing, bad advice that attorneys will give you. Just name it the property address. I think that's pretty dumb. But I think one thing that you can kind of turn that around a little bit. Let's say the property is located at 123 Vine Street. And instead of following our good old lawyer's advice of naming it the 123 Vine Street Trust, let's name it the 1215 Harrison Street Trust, even though it's got 123 Vine Street in it. We throw the dogs off right away, don't we? Would anybody ever do that? Name a trust for a property that's not in the trust? Sure would. Sure would. That throws them off. We called our county recorder's office and said, how many characters can you fit in the field when you type in the deed? And they said something like 32. That kind of made a mistake, didn't it? What if we had 33 characters in the name of our trust? One drops off. One drops off. Now, when you sue an entity, you have to have it exactly right, or you may be suing something wrong, and then you're in deep trouble. You don't want to sue somebody when you don't have justification to sue. So this is what we do. This is fun. This is
some.
Life doesn't get any better than this, guys. This is fun. Yes, ma'am.
When you put your property into a trust, how does it affect the property taxes and the capital gains taxes?
Not at all. Again, it's a pass-through entity, so the tax bill that you pay flows through the beneficiary. The beneficiary is you personally, then you write it off on your 1040. Schedule E, just like you have been doing. If you put an LLC in there and you file a partnership return or whatever you do with your LLC, then you would deal with it there. You still get the benefits, good and bad. All tax benefits flow through the beneficiary. Capital gains, yes, you still qualify for Section 121, $250,000 a gain.
Oh, this is on commercial property.
Okay. The other thing you can exchange, Section 1031 of the IRS code will allow you to exchange either at the trustee level, trustee to trustee, or at the beneficiary level. Take your pick. You can do an exchange with a land trust at the trustee level or the beneficiary level.
But if you just sold it, do you still have a tax basis of when you inherited it?
Yeah, doesn't change your basis, doesn't change your capital gains, none of that. It's changing just like you had it in your name.
Uh-huh.
That's kind of interesting. Has anybody in here ever been audited?
Yeah.
Did they ask you for proof of ownership of your real estate? Did they ask you to see a deed?
No, I didn't.
But you depreciated all that stuff, didn't you? Did that make your mind wander at all? It makes me wonder who's depreciating the Empire State Building. I mean, if they don't make you prove it, it's just a side thought I had. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of like one day, when you pay off a loan, sometimes the lender will send you the release. And I took the release. I paid this loan off. I took the release down to the courthouse. I said, I want to record this. And they said, well, they looked up and said, this is incorrect. And I said, what do you mean? They said, well, that mortgage wasn't on that property. And it was in a trust. And what I found out was I had made one little mistake on the lot number on the deed. It was one digit off. And so I thought, well, wait a minute. So my mortgage has been on my neighbor's property all this time? That's kind of interesting. Funny things happen, you know? Just funny things happen. All right, so let's move on here. Let's talk about benefits to a land trust specific to your wonderful state of California. Are you guys aware of the 3.3% sales tax? So if you sell, I know you guys, your garages are $1 million out here, so if you sell a garage for $1 million, you're going to pay how much in sales tax?
3.3.
And how much is that, Dan? Of $1 million, that's a real round number of $33,000. What if you only have $30,000 of equity in the property? You got to write a check, don't you?
That
Now,
doesn't work out very well.
that doesn't work out very well. Here you thought you were going to have a payday, and you have to bring $2,000 in closing.